Stories, Philippines podcast.
A darkness permeates this episode, touching on scenes and themes some may find deeply unsettling. Listener prudence is absolutely necessary. I am Paul, and you are listening to Stories Philippines podcast. The line went dead with a metallic click that echoed in the heart of the night, a sound too sharp for the soft glow of the desk lamp. It wasn't the silence that unnerved people. It was the echo of a sound that shouldn't have been. Imagine it is the year 2005, June. A heat wave presses down on the capital, Manila, and yet an internal chilling cold grips the nation. You are sitting at home, perhaps in Quezon City or a quiet suburban street in Dasmariñas, Cavite. The television is on, showing the usual flurry of political chatter, but your attention is split. You hold your cell phone, a small plastic Nokia or a heavy boxy Samsung, and you are talking to someone, a friend, a loved one, a colleague. You are discussing something mundane, or perhaps something private, something you would never want repeated. Now imagine a second sound, faint but unmistakable, a slight shift in the static of the call. It is a breath, not your breath, not the breath of the person you are speaking to, but a third party. They are listening. Does the skin prickle on the back of your neck? Does the air in the room suddenly feel thinner, heavier? This is the psychological reality that crashed over the Philippines in those humid weeks of June 2005. It was a time when the very simple act of picking up a telephone, a device meant for private, direct communication, became an act of terrifying exposure. The feeling was primal, the walls had ears, the wires were live, and the voice on the other end might not be the only one hearing your secrets. The physical, living spirits of Filipino folklore, Elias Swang, Getikbalang, the whispered tales of the Moto, are fears you can often fight or run from. They are rooted in the physical world, in dark paths and lonely houses. But what happens when the fear is disembodied? An invisible, omnipresent listener that breaches the sanctity of your private life, turning the most modern form of communication into a haunted space. The ghost of this story is not flesh and bone. It is not even a spirit with a recognizable form. The ghost is a disembodied voice, a voice on a tape recording. And the chilling concept that the most powerful person in the land might have been listening to your conversation. We're talking about the Hello Garcia tapes, an event that shattered the national consciousness and introduced a new kind of political and paranormal horror into the Filipino experience. The modern telephone, the voice carried over copper wires or invisible radio waves, promised a connection that transcended distance. For a country as sprawling and geographically fragmented as the Philippines, an archipelago of over 7,000 islands, the telephone was a lifeline, a bridge. It allowed families divided by the sea to speak as if they were in the same room. It allowed lovers to whisper across city blocks. It provided the ultimate sense of private space in a culture where extended families often lived under one roof, and privacy was a luxury few could afford. But what if that bridge was a lie? In the mid-1980s, the Philippines was emerging from a long, suffocating period of dictatorship. A key promise of the new democracy was freedom. Freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and the essential foundational freedom from unwarranted surveillance. The trauma of the martial law era, where intelligence agencies were rumored to monitor dissenters' calls, was still a fresh, weeping wound. In this context, the folklore of the secret listener took on a political dimension. The traditional Filipino concept of paranoia often centers on the spiritual. Superstition dictates that if you speak ill of the spirits, they will hear and retaliate. There is a deep-seated cultural belief that certain words spoken aloud carry weight and can invite danger, a belief known locally as usog, or just plain bad luck. The Hello Garci scandal took this spiritual paranoia and made it technological and governmental. It was the ultimate betrayal of trust. The core of the issue was an intercepted phone conversation allegedly between the then president and an election official named Garciano, discussing the rigging of the 2004 national elections. The tape itself was a murky, low-fidelity recording. It was difficult to discern the voices clearly, it was fragmented, it was in many ways like a supernatural experience. Something heard, not seen, something that defied absolute confirmation, yet held an undeniable chilling power. The key phrase, "Hello, Garci, just confirm it," became the shorthand for the entire horrifying episode. This single, disembodied voice on a scratchy recording was the new political ghost haunting the airwaves. The fear was infectious, spreading like a contagion through the phone lines. You didn't have to be a high-ranking politician to feel it. The shared trauma made everyone a suspect and everyone a potential target. This feeling is perfectly captured in the unnerving personal stories people share about their phone experiences. Consider the story shared by the person who calls themselves podcast addict. This individual, listening to a late-night podcast with earphones, drifts in and out of sleep. The simple, familiar comfort of the earphones is suddenly shattered when they are removed and then repeatedly replaced by bony, lifeless hands. The hands are not trying to hurt the person, they are trying to force them to listen. The ghost whispers incomprehensible words and then a final, terrifying command. Listen to my story. This is not a ghost story about sight. It is a ghost story about sound and forced listening. The entity, the multo, demands an audience. It requires the living to pay attention to its disembodied voice. In the political context of the wiretapped nation, the ghost is the suppressed truth, the unheard grievance, demanding to be played and replayed until the living are terrified into recognition. The bony hands are the cold mechanical grip of the surveillance state, forcing the receiver into the ear, compelling the citizen to confront the terrifying knowledge of what was recorded. The psychological horror of this era can be compared to similar moments of mass paranoia in international history. During the Cold War, the widespread fear of Soviet wiretapping in Berlin, or Washington created a culture of deep suspicion where people communicated in code or by writing notes. In the Philippines in 2005, betrayal felt deeply personal. It struck at the heart of the national identity, which values honesty and personal honor above all else. When the highest office in the land is accused of cheating, the entire moral fabric of the nation feels ripped apart. The phone, once a symbol of connection, became a vessel of anxiety. Take the story of Smaugi, working alone in an office on a quiet Sunday in Dasmariñas, Cavite. At the ungodly hour of 5:20 in the morning, two telephones ring simultaneously. When Smaugi answers, there is no human voice, only a raspy sound or a noise like crumpled paper near the mic, a sound that is present yet utterly devoid of meaning. Later, the lights in the upper office flicker on, and three phones begin to ring at the same time. In the traditional folklore of the Philippines, a ringing telephone with no one on the line is a common premonition. It is often believed to be the dead trying to communicate, an echo from a disconnected realm. But in a post-Garci world, the empty ringing carries a different meaning. It is the omnipresent, empty noise of surveillance. It is the sound of the line being open, the recording device whirring, even when no human voice is speaking. The sound like crumpled paper is the ghost in the machine, the static of a line that is always monitored. The sheer number of these unexplained phone calls all ringing at once suggests something far deeper than coincidence. It speaks to a shared, collective trauma echoing through the lines. Ili, a hotel receptionist in Manila, begins receiving call after call from empty rooms on the 4th floor. At first, the calls are only filled with an airy, hollow sound, like a whisper carried through static. Then comes a woman's loud, hysterical laughter, and finally, silence, followed by a soft, mournful cry. Concerned, Ili sends the room attendant upstairs to check. Moments later, his voice crackles through the radio, trembling. "Ma'am, I hear someone singing up here." "A woman. Are you sure there's no one checked in on this floor?" With empty room, the ringing phone, the disembodied voice, it is a classic supernatural setup. but the political reality of the time provided a psychological framework for this fear. The nation itself felt like a vast, empty hotel floor, with a ghost operating the switchboard, randomly connecting calls to reveal the hidden despair and madness that had taken root. If you find yourself caught in the unsettling web of these connections, remember you are not alone. Submit your stories to our email, storiesphpodcast@gmail.com, and let your voice be heard in a safe space. The technology of the time was simple, landlines and early generation cell phones, yet these devices facilitated the deepest sense of technological violation. Exec9914 shares a story about a landline. A friend calls the house phone and asks if the number is correct because a house help had answered the friend, claiming it was the wrong number. The problem? The house helper goes home at 6 in the evening and this call happened at 9:15 at night. The voice that answers the phone is an identity thief, a ghost taking on the persona of a trusted, known figure to push the caller away, to deny entry. The friend even notes that the house help's voice is the one that has been telling them wrong number repeatedly for weeks. This mirrors the political tactic of denial and misdirection that defined the era. The truth was denied, the evidence was discredited, and the public was repeatedly told they were hearing things, that the number they dialed, the truth they were seeking, was incorrect. The ghostly house help is the gatekeeper of the lie, a familiar face delivering an unsettling message. The folklore surrounding technology suggests that spirits are drawn to electricity and signal. In one haunting account, a person shares the case of a toy telephone belonging to their cousin who died young. The toy, a simple battery-powered plaything, begins to activate on its own, emitting the airplane sound and repeating the number 8 without anyone touching it. The witness slowly realizes the chilling possibility. It might be the deceased child's older sister, once described as mischievous and full of life, who is now playfully pressing the buttons from beyond. The ghost is not a malevolent demon, it is a child's spirit, playfully and persistently using the technology it can no longer physically touch. The technology is simply a new medium for an old, persistent, playful, and sometimes terrifying presence. In the political mirror, the youth who protested the tape, the young democracy shattered by the revelation, became the persistent, disembodied voices of dissent, constantly pressing the buttons of the state. The ultimate technological horror is the ringing phone with no discernible source. Sadako, an agriculture student, recounts being up on a mountain where there is no cell phone signal, a place where everyone has removed their SIM cards to conserve battery or because the phones are used only for music. Yet, Sadako's phone rings. The screen simply says, "calling." When the call ends, the log shows only "unknown." Later, the same chilling disembodied ring is heard from a low-battery, non-functional phone left on a high shelf. In a country where one is taught to be wary of the unseen, a phone call with no network, no number, and no voice is a terrifying breach of reality. It defies all logic and natural law. It is the political trauma pushed to an extreme, a pervasive surveillance so complete that it transcends the laws of physics and communication. The unknown caller is the ultimate expression of the unaccountable power that feels its way into every dark corner of your life. The act of the phone ringing without a SIM card is the final chilling thought. The machine itself is haunted. These stories of the disembodied voice, the unexplained call, the ghostly housekeeper, the insistent whispers that travel through earphones are the modern omens of the Philippines, dark echoes that stretch from the spiritual past into the technological present. They are not just ghost tales to frighten children or amuse the sleepless. They are reflections of a society in transition, a people caught between superstition and surveillance, between faith and fear. In a land once haunted by creatures that walked the forests and dwelled beneath the balete trees, the new phantoms do not need faces. They manifest through static, through the soft hiss of a line that will not close, through the eerie sensation that someone unseen is always listening. The shift is profound. The terror has moved from the physical to the digital, from the haunted path to the humming telephone wire. Each story whispers of a collective unease. A maid's familiar voice answering the phone long after she has gone home. A hotel's empty floor, its phones ringing into the void. A child's toy telephone that speaks again, as if the fingers of the dead still play with it from the other side. These moments form a new folklore, one that belongs to the era of electricity, of microphones and signals, of recorded truth and distorted lies. What these voices represent is more than fear. It is a reflection of a nation's wounded trust. The Filipino psyche, long steeped in stories of the unseen, finds itself grappling with the unnerving truth that modern ghosts no longer hide in shadows. They live within the very machines meant to connect us. The line between faith and technology blurs, and in that static-filled space emerges something eerily human, the dread of being overheard. In the past, omens came in the form of a falling picture frame, a howling dog, or the faint knock of a spirit at midnight. Now, the omen is the vibration of a phone at 3 a.m., a call that shows no number, a voice that greets you by name before vanishing into white noise. It is a transformation of folklore, proof that superstition evolves with its storyteller. When the Hello Garci scandal broke, it did more than expose a political conspiracy. It awakened a buried cultural instinct. The Filipino, whose ancestors once whispered to the spirits for guidance, now whispered about wiretaps and hidden recordings. The fear of ghosts became entwined with the fear of power. The haunting was no longer supernatural, it was systemic. To answer a ringing phone became a small act of defiance, a test of faith. Was the voice on the other end a friend, a ghost, or something worse, a spy cloaked in authority? Every conversation felt fragile, every word heavy with consequence. The familiar crackle of poor signal took on a sinister weight, as if each pop of static carried an unspoken threat. These stories of the disembodied voice then are not isolated tales of the paranormal. They are the living mythology of a nation coming to terms with its own vulnerability. They are the sound of a collective conscience echoing through copper and airwaves, an entire people haunted not by what they can see, but by what they can no longer trust. They remind us that horror is not always about death. Sometimes it is about being heard when you thought you were alone. It is about realizing that the silence after a dial tone is not empty. It is listening. And perhaps that is the truest haunting of all. The feeling of betrayal in 2005 was palpable. It led to mass protests, calls for impeachment, and a fundamental questioning of the country's democratic foundations. The disembodied voice on the tape was not just an auditory phenomenon. It was a catalyst for a massive, collective, psychological unraveling. The fear of being wiretapped translated into a fear of being watched, a fear of trusting any spoken word, and a fear that the machinery of the state was not just broken, but actively, malevolently operating against its own people. We believe that being seen is believing, but this episode proves that hearing can be far more terrifying, particularly when the source of the sound remains invisible, unverifiable, and absolutely everywhere. Remember, you can find show notes and support options in the description of this episode, access exclusive content on Patreon to support our deep dives into the shadows of the Philippines, and follow us on social media for daily folklore facts to keep the conversation going. The question remains, when the voice on the line is a ghost, a product of collective fear and betrayal, does destroying the source silence the ringing? The infamous tape was leaked, investigated, denied, and debated, but the psychological ghost it birthed remains in the airwaves. Every unexpected click on a private call, every dropped line, every mysterious missed number from an unknown source, it is the faint, rasping echo of that original, unforgivable wiretap. Is the paranoia truly gone, or has the ghost of the wiretapped voice simply learned to whisper? Was the truth truly revealed, or was the ghost just forcing you to listen to its story? As the great philosopher and writer Albert Camus once wrote, the greatest crime is not developing your potential. When you do what you do best, you are helping not only yourself, but the world. So the ghost story of the wiretapped phone is the story of a nation struggling to fulfill its democratic potential, haunted by the specter of a voice that betrayed its trust. Thank you for tuning in to this unsettling journey through the dark history of the Philippines. We appreciate your time and attention in joining us as we explore these haunting stories and difficult chapters of the past. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share this podcast so more listeners can discover these episodes and keep the conversation alive. If you're able to support the podcast financially, you can find ways to do so listed in the show notes. Your contributions help us research, produce, and bring more content to you. Until the next sound in the dark, stay curious and take care. Goodbye.